So it seems we have quite a lot of leaks for the new Deathwatch Codex. The Xenopurge Discipline looks quite powerful, and there's a new and interesting mechanic called Kill Team Specialisms. Let's take a look through. Hello and welcome back to Auspex Tactics, the strategy focused 40k channel, where today we're focusing on the new Deathwatch Codex. These leaks are out in multiple places over the internet, including both Reddit and Facebook. Though we don't have the entire complete codex yet, we only have some bits of it. So far from the leak, it looks like we've got some confirmation on special issue ammunition, the rules for the kill teams and kill team specialisms. The specialisms seem to be a new mechanic where you pay points for extra rerolls versus certain battlefield roles. There's the Xenopurge Discipline with the standard 6 spells, and it's looking pretty good to be honest. Some of those powers are really powerful. 6 Warlord Traits, 4 secondary objectives, not 3, I couldn't count when I made this slide it seems. And a few changes to points costs, which are sort of meaningless until we know the changes to the datasheets. I'm not going to focus on those quite so much here, seeing as it is a bit meaningless without the datasheets. Basically Cassius and Codician Natorian, they're both 100 points, Artemis is 110 and the Watchmaster is 125. Deathwatch veterans start at 20, including their special issue Bolter, and otherwise most of the units are completely unchanged from that Index Astartes PDF document that came out recently. We'll hopefully look a bit more at those when we actually have the full codex. At the moment, in terms of details we're still waiting for, we don't know any further changes to the datasheet since the index, we don't know any of the relics. I'd quite like to see the full rules for this Mission Tactics Doctrine ability, the one that lets them pick which doctrine they start in, and so far there's no leaks as to their Crusade rules. Plenty to come, but let's go through what we know section by section. First of all, special issue ammunition very much seems to be the same as the Index Astartes, only applicable to weapons that have the special issue ammunition keyword, such as Deathwatch bolt guns and Deathwatch combi weapons. It sounds like it's not coming back on things like storm bolters, bolt rifles and twin bolt guns in this update. I guess one positive is that it seems to be working with bolter discipline now. Still, standard Deathwatch vets remaining stationary and firing bolt guns downrange is a bit more viable than it was, but it's hard to say that the mechanic hasn't lost some power if you can't take it on these other more powerful bolt guns. The actual rules for the weapons have changed a bit. They are the same as the Index Astartes, I believe. Dragonfire ignores the benefits of cover. Hellfire gives you +1 to wound against non-vehicles and non-titanics. That is a bit of a nerf to Hellfire as well, unfortunately. Wounding on 2+ all the time is better than +1 to wound. Kraken is the same, +6 inches to the range and improving AP by 1, and that will stack with Tactical Doctrine incidentally. And Vengeance has received a bit of a change, it's now +1 damage, so pretty good against anything that's 2 wounds. Honestly, it does still seem good, though it will have to compete against the Storm Bolter getting double the shots for only 2 points more. Next up we have those kill teams. Again, these are the same as the Index. Proteus starts with 5 Deathwatch veterans, and you can add Bikers, Terminators and Vanguard veterans the same as before, but they no longer grant the squad any special rules other than the squad gaining that Melter Bomb keyword if there's a Vanguard veteran in the unit. That one allows you to use the Melter Bomb stratagem from Codex Space Marines, where you make 1 attack and get 2d3 mortal wounds on a vehicle if it lands. Then we have the 3 flavours of Primaris kill teams, the Fortis one for 5 Intercessors, then you can add in Assault Intercessors, Outriders and Hellblasters. These ones unfortunately don't share any special rules at all, though the Outriders still get their devastating charge ability when the squad charges. Then there's the Indomitor kill team, which is 5 heavy Intercessors, then you can add in Eradicators, Inceptors or Aggressors. Quite an interesting Gravis armoured one there. Again, no shared special rules, but Eradicators can still use their Total Obliteration rule when the squad all focuses down 1 target. Not sure it's actually going to be the optimal way to run them though. I see Eradicators being better in small units of 3, so they're not just doing overkill all on 1 unit. Finally, we have that long-awaited Phobos kill team, the Spectrus kill team. This one starts with 5 Infiltrators, then adding Cursors, Eliminators and Reavers up to your max of 10. This one does share a couple of special rules. If you have an Infiltrator in the unit, then Omni Scramblers applies to everyone, which is quite cool. And the same goes for Reavers and Terror Troops. I think it's quite interesting that you can have up to 5 Eliminators in 1 squad as well. If you really wanted to double down on them, then that's a lot of sniper fire that you could get out of the Deathwatch. The main downside I see for this one is having to take 5 Infiltrators as a base. They're not terrible, but they're just a little bit pricey compared with Incursors. Honestly, out of all of these units, I still see the standard Proteus kill team possibly being the most interesting. Their Deathwatch veterans do get their special issue ammunition after all. Terminators could make some excellent tanking wounds for the unit. and a vanguard vet or bike or two could make charges a lot easier due to chaining out a unit with their decent movement. They're certainly looking pretty good in my eyes. When you've got these kill teams, you can now upgrade them with kill team specialisms. You can upgrade kill team units in Deathwatch detachments to have one of 6 specialisms, and each one can only be used once. Kill team Cassius, if you feel that, automatically gets the Aquila one for free, and that doesn't stop you from having another team taking the Aquila kill team specialism. Out of the 6, most of them work almost exactly the same, but the Aquila one works a little bit differently. Deathwatch's new Xenos Hunter chapter tactic allows them to nominate an enemy battlefield roll at the start of the game, and you get to reroll wound rolls of 1 against that roll. So say if you picked troops, you get to reroll those wound rolls of 1 against all enemy troops. The Aquila one gets you to pick another battlefield roll at the start of the game, and any Aquila kill teams get to reroll ones against that target as well. So say if your opponent had lots of troops and fast attack choices, this one would allow you to have lots of rerolls against both of those types on those given teams. You will be paying 25 points for the privilege though, and while extra wound rerolls are nice, I'm not sure it's going to be the best pick compared with some of the others here. You're still going to get to reroll wound rolls against your optimal target anyway, and I'm just not sure that 25 points is worth the opportunity cost compared with taking more veterans. The others, however, are perhaps a bit more interesting. They basically lock you into being experts against one battlefield roll pre-game, and they'll always be able to reroll wound rolls of 1 against that particular target, but if that also happens to be the roll that you select for your Xenos Hunter's chapter tactic, then it will actually allow you to reroll all wound rolls against that given choice. That's honestly a very powerful buff, and it could be pretty good on a certain dedicated unit. The options you have are Dominatus for 25 points, that's the anti-elite one. Fury is 35 points, so a bit more, that's anti-troops. Malleus is also 35, and that's heavy support, Lords of War and dedicated transports. Purgatus is 25 points, that's enemy HQs, and Venatus is 25 points, that's fast attack and flyers. I think it's perhaps a bit annoying that you have to lock these in pre-game, so you potentially could be in a situation where you're against a foe who has very few of the given battlefield roll. A few combos that spring to mind are maybe having a big squad of assault intercessors with the 3-shot bolt rifles and make them a Fury kill team. You could potentially have them teleport in, shoot twice with rapid fire to spit out 60 shots worth of bolted death, and then potentially have them re-rolling all wound rolls against enemy troops. That's certainly going to leave a mark, particularly in tactical doctrine. You could maybe make a team full of Hellblasters and Malleus kill team, then whenever you're against a foe that has a lot of heavy support, you could pick that one for your chapter tactic and then give them full wound rerolls against the heavies. Or perhaps you could take a Spectrus kill team and give yourself a bunch of Eliminators with baked-in rerolls against enemy HQs. Quite a few interesting options here, though I don't think that many people will take the ones for anti-elites or anti-fast attack and flyers, as you might play against armies that only have 1 or 2 of those units in their entire list. Moving on, we come to the Xenopurge Discipline, which is really quite good I think, with multiple useful and playable spells. Starting off strong, we have Premorphic Resonance for Warp Charge 6. It's an 18-inch Blessing Psychic power, and you can use this on any Deathwatch unit. It doesn't have to be core or infantry. That unit then gets to Overwatch on 5+, it always fights first, and on top of that you get +1 to hit in melee. Quite a decent amount of assault related buffs there. The first 2 could be pretty useful if your opponent's charging you, but I think that the last one is really the pick. It's be really good with anything Power Fist or Thunderhammer related. I really like the idea of that with a squad of Deathwatch Vanguard veterans with Thunderhammers and a heavy Thunderhammer. Charge into the enemy, hit on 3s, and you could even combine that with an early assault doctrine via the Deathwatch Mission Tactics rule. Really quite a nice melee buff this one. Next we have Fortified with Contempt. This one's Warp Charge 6 and a blessing that affects an infantry or biker unit within 18 inches, and it's a nice plain and simple 5+ feel no pain. As any Death Guard player will tell you, this is a very nice ability to have. You really can't go too far wrong with this, just throw it on the Deathwatch unit that's most likely to attract enemy attention next turn, and they won't die anywhere near as easily. This is just going to be good on anything Space Marine now. Any 2-wound infantry, Terminators, Gravis armor, even Invader ATVs if you really want maximal cheese. I would pretty much always take this one if I was taking this discipline. The one that they previewed and I'm not quite as much a fan of, it's Warp Charge 7 Malediction at 18 inches, and the enemy unit that's targeted gets -1 attack and can only ever declare a charge on the closest unit. It's not bad, but I wouldn't personally ever take it, mainly just because you might be playing against an enemy army without a big melee Death Star unit that you'd really want to put this on. It's just a bit too situational for me. Next we have Psychic Cleanse, which is a Warp Charge 6 Witchfire. This one's a little bit underwhelming as well, I think. You roll a dice for every enemy model within 9 inches of the Psyker, and on a 6 that model's unit suffers a mortal wound. It'd be okay with doing some passable damage to hordes, but you have to get your Psyker very very close indeed, and in general I'm just not convinced compared with other options. Next up we have Mantle of Shadow, which is quite an interesting one. It's Warp Charge 6, and it's a blessing that targets Deathwatch infantry within 12 inches. If the unit that you nominate doesn't shoot or charge, then the enemy can't target them unless they're within 12 inches, or is the closest unit to them. Being able to guarantee a unit's survival for a turn is just really handy to have. Could be nice for a unit trying to do an action on one side of the board. Could be great to protect some melee troops as they move up. Maybe you have a big squad of tooled up Vanguard veterans just behind the front lines. You can maybe have something exceptionally hardy, such as a squad of heavy intercessors in front of them, and then they won't be able to be shot while they move up. Quite a nice tricksy little psychic power. Finally we have a power called Severance, which has the potential to mess with enemy auras. It's Warp Charge 7 and is a malediction, and it targets an enemy character within 18 inches. That character suffers a mortal wound, and any of its aura abilities are decreased by 3 inches. Furthermore, if your psychic test that you rolled was greater than the character's leadership characteristic, then the auras are turned off altogether. For me, I think that this one's interesting. It really has the potential to be absolutely devastating against certain armies. Say if you manage to shut down Brabute Gilliman's aura for a turn, that could be pretty special. But you do have to be at least relatively close to the front lines to get it off. Warp Charge 7 isn't the most reliable thing to cast ever, and you might run into a fair few armies that just won't care about this whatsoever. Really depends on who you're fighting as to whether or not this one's going to be good. For me, the pick of the discipline is that 5+ Feel No Pain. I pretty much always take that, and I really quite like Premorphic Resonance and Mantle of Shadow. Could be quite interesting to run Deathwatch with multiple librarians, maybe one have the Xenopurge Discipline and one have the Librarius Discipline. Then you could get a very sturdy battle line going with a 5+ Invul save from a Psychic Fortress and a 5+ Feel No Pain with Fortified with Contempt. That could be pretty sturdy on something like a Gravis Armoured Kill Team, a squad of Terminators, or everyone's favourite Invader ATVs. Next up we come to the Deathwatch Warlord Traits. These ones have been quite extensively reworked since the Codex, and while many share the same names, a few of them have quite different abilities. Vigilance Incarnate, which is Artemis's one, allows you to make one of your Deathwatch core units within 6 inches have reroll wound rolls of 1 against 1 battlefield roll. Not too bad for a backfield buffing character. You could maybe have a Watchmaster also functioning as a lieutenant for one of your kill teams advancing towards the enemy. I don't think that this will be a bad pickup for a buffing commander. Next we have Paragon of their chapter. I think this one's really quite fun, and it allows you to select one of the chapter specific Warlord traits from Codex Space Marines, so you could have say an Ultramarines one or an Imperial Fist one. I know that this isn't a Warlord trait from any one of the supplement books, it's the very limited list of Codex specific ones within Codex Space Marines itself, but still this is a really powerful ability. It essentially gives Deathwatch a whopping 12 extra Warlord traits. There are honestly quite a lot of good picks for this one. You could have Crimson Fists getting back up from refusal to die, Ultramarines command point farming, Dark Angels manipulating doctrines and putting a unit in Devastator when the rest of your army is in tactical, or Space Wolves Beast Slayer for some absolutely ludicrous power when you're fighting monsters or vehicles. I think this one's really quite fun and fluffy, and it's really powerful giving them access to so many different options. One interesting addition to the rule though is that if your heraldry that you've painted on the model is from one chapter, then you must use that one. Just a little bit more of Games Workshop restricting how we play the rules as per how the models are painted. Next we have Nowhere to Hide, which Codicea Notorian has. You pick an enemy unit during the command phase, and when you shoot at that unit with Deathwatch core units within 6 inches of this Warlord, they'll get to ignore any benefit of light cover that that unit is receiving. I guess it's okay, could be interesting with a lot of low AP shooting perhaps. Next up we have Optimized Priority, which Cassius gets. This one's an aura for Deathwatch core units and characters, and they can shoot while doing an action, which I guess isn't too bad, though I don't think it's one that I'd take as my actual Warlord trait to be honest. Next we have Castellan of the Black Vault, which is another really quite fun one in my opinion. This one essentially allows you to take 2 relics, though one of them has to be an Adamantine Mantle, Artificer Armour, Mastercrafted Weapon, or Digital Weapons. I feel like this one could be interesting for making a character that's just really hard to kill. You could take that Adamantine Mantle for the 5+ Feel No Pain and combine that with another relic from Codex Space Marines that gives you boosted saves or invuls or things. Alternatively, if you just wanted a mastercrafted weapon on top of a relic that was going to buff units nearby, then that's also an option. Finally, we have the Ties That Bind. This gives you a 6-inch aura of re-rolling morale tests for core units, and in the command phase you can select one core unit within 6 inches, and that unit gains OBSEC or counts as 2 models if they already had OBSEC. Granting OBSEC is good, although we did kind of already have the option from Codex Space Marines, so it's not really going to change all that much. Overall, out of these Warlord traits, I think I'm actually the biggest fan of Paragon of their chapter. The Ultramarine command point farming, Dark Angel's Doctrine manipulation, or +1 to hit and wound enemy vehicles with Space Wolves is really pretty powerful. Otherwise, my other favourites are Vigilance Incarnate, just for some more buffs to Bolterfire, and Castellan of the Black Vault to mix multiple relics as being other interesting options. Finally, let's talk about unique secondary objectives, which I believe that you will be able to take in addition to the ones that are already in Codex Space Marines. First we have the Long Vigil, a battlefield supremacy one. This one's all about repelling the enemy from your deployment zone, and you get 5 victory points at the end of your command phase if there are no enemy units within your deployment zone or within 6 inches of it, and there's at least one Deathwatch unit within your deployment zone. You also can't score this at the start of the first battle round, so you only have 4 turns to do it. Probably could be most use if you're fighting an enemy army that really wants to be going nowhere near your deployment zone, something that's very gunliney and shooty. I feel like though this will be a bad pick against most armies, it could be very easy for your opponent to thwart this all game long. Next we have Cull Order, which is a Purge the Enemy objective. Basically you choose one battlefield role, your opponent chooses 2 of them, and then at the end of the game, unless there are any enemy units with that battlefield role left on the table, you gain 5 victory points for each one of those roles. Basically your opponent is going to be trying to choose 2 battlefield roles that you're going to struggle to remove from the table. Maybe if they have some really hardy troops then they might choose that, or they might want to choose HQs if they don't think that you're going to be able to get to them. I think this one's interesting, although I think it does place a lot of power in your opponent's hands, as they get to pick 2 of those roles and then they could try and counterplay you by keeping at least one of those units safe from each of those. Still though, I think that this one is a bit more usable. Next we have Cripple Stronghold, a shadow operations one that sounds really quite hard to achieve to me. Your opponent has to nominate one objective as their stronghold, and if they have an objective in their deployment zone, then they have to choose that. Deathwatch Infantry can use the Cripple Stronghold action and get 6 victory points for each time they use it, and it starts at the end of your movement phase. There must be no enemy units on that stronghold objective, and it ends at the end of your next command phase, so basically the enemy is going to have an entire turn to gun down your infantry squad. Honestly, I think that this one sounds like a bit of a gamble. If your opponent knows that you've got this, they're going to really defend that one point of the battlefield with all they've got, and unless you're basically wiping out your entire opponent's army anyway, then I don't think you're likely to be able to achieve it. Finally, we've got Suffer Not the Alien, which is quite a powerful one against Xenos armies. It's a no mercy, no respite objective, and you basically get 1 victory point per Xenos unit killed by a Deathwatch unit. It defines Xenos units as one with the Tyranid, Eldari, Orc, Necron or Tau keywords. Now this one could be very easy if the opponent has a whole load of Xenos units and they're playing very multiple small units. I think against most fairly balanced armies it's not going to be the most overpowered, but if you do run into some unlucky Xenos player that's just taken absolutely tons of small units, then it's pretty much an easy one to max. In any case, if you are playing against Xenos, you'd be pretty much guaranteed to at least get some victory points from this, and it could potentially be a very strong pick. Out of these, I'd say that Suffer Not the Alien is the strongest of the bunch, followed by Cull Order, where the other 2 are quite easy for your opponent to play against you. So at the moment that's it for leaks from the Deathwatch Codex. Hopefully we'll be back sometime in the next few days to give a full review of the book. I'm really looking forward to digging through their datasheets, war gear and stratagems. Let me know what you think of the leaks so far down in the comments below. Do you think the Deathwatch are shaping up to be decent in the new edition, or is the loss of their universal special issue ammunition just a bit too much to bear? Feel free to subscribe to the channel if you'd like to see the full review when it comes out, or just check back later. Finally, if you are enjoying the videos on the channel and you'd like to help keep them coming, I'd just like to mention that I have a Patreon page which you can find down in the video description. Making all of these videos does take a fair amount of time, and if you are enjoying regularly, then any support is massively appreciated. Channel patrons get a few benefits, including seeing certain videos early, regular votes to see what sort of things come next on the channel, and also access to the regular Auspex Tactics prize giveaway with a chance to win big kits at the start of each month. If any of that sounds good to you, or you'd just like to help support the channel, then the link is down in the video description. In any case, a massive thank you for listening, and I'll hope to see you guys next time.